Welcome to another lesson on Swift Deep Dive. In today's lesson, we're going to talk more about functions. And we've already seen functions in action, so we know that there are two stages to any function. First, the part where we create the function, where we have the func keyword and we specify the name of the function, and then we describe what the function should do. And then there's a second part where some point down the line where we call the function and the computer will look to see where our function was defined and do all of the stuff that we said it should. So what is the problem that a function actually solves? Well, let's say that you had a little robot that you bought and you need it to fetch some milk from the store. So you would have to tell it a whole bunch of instructions. Say you had to do it via print statements. You would have to tell it to leave the house and then move right 2 blocks, move up 4 blocks, move right 2 blocks again, and then buy the milk, and then all the way back with all the instructions in order to get your milk. So if you had to do this day after day, then your fingers would hurt from typing, literally. So how can we make this better? Well, what if we could take all of these instructions and package them together into a function? And this is essentially what our functions do. It packages a whole bunch of instructions into a block of code which can be triggered simply by calling the function name. So now we can identify all of these instructions by a simple and descriptive name. So the next time you want your robot to buy you some milk, you could simply just call get milk and it will be able to look up what it needs to do through the get milk function and then be able to perform that task. Much shorter and much less typing. So here are the two parts of the function. The part where we create the function looks like this, and the part where we call the function looks like this, where we simply specify the name of the function, so in this case it's called getMilk, and then we add a pair of parentheses which are empty, and a little bit later on when we look at more complex functions, we'll learn what we can put inside these parentheses. But if we simply just want to trigger a block of code like this, then we just need to call our function like this. Now, if you open up your playground again, or simply create a new playground if you can't find the other one, then delete everything that's currently inside to start with a clean slate, and we're going to create a function of our own. We're going to use the func keyword to specify that we're creating a new function, and then we're going to give that function a name, so we're going to call it greeting, and then we're going to add a set of parentheses and then a set of curly braces. If we break this line down, this is the keyword that creates a new function. This is the name that we've given the function. The round braces or the parentheses is where we can put some potential inputs, and the curly braces is where the body of the function will go. So when this function is triggered, it's going to look inside these curly braces to see what code needs to get executed. Now, more commonly, you'll see a function formatted like this. And in fact, every time you create a new function, as soon as you open up the open curly brace, if you just hit enter, Xcode will automatically insert the closing brace for you in the right position. And this makes it much easier to avoid these missing curly braces and make your code a lot easier to read. Let's say that in our function, when it gets triggered, it's going to print hello to the debug console. So if we go here, click on it and hold and change to manually run, I can manually select which lines of code I want to run until. So if I click on, say, line 6 or line 7, and it's going to run all of the lines above. Now, you might expect something to happen, but nothing happened. Why? There's nothing wrong with your computer. It's actually because it's not enough to just create a function. You also have to trigger it or execute it. And in programming, we call that calling the function. So on line 6 or 7, we can call the function by simply tapping into its name. And you can see that as soon as I do that, we get a little F symbol here, F for function, show up. And it shows us that, hey, did you mean to call the greeting function? And yeah, I did. So I'm going to hit enter, and it automatically inserts the rest of the code for me. So now if we try to run our code, and including the line where we called our function, well, then you'll see it actually trigger all the code in here, and the word hello actually gets printed. Remember, the func keyword is used to create a set of instructions and package it with a name, and the actual name plus the parentheses is where you actually activate or call that function. Here's a challenge. Change the code so that you get the word hello printed 4 times. Now, there's a few ways of doing this, and as long as you can get the words hello printed down here 4 times, then you can consider yourself successful. Now, one way of doing this is to simply copy our print statement and have it execute 4 times when we trigger the greeting function. That will get us our hello printed 4 times. But the alternative is we could have also just called our function 4 times, right? So if I press play, you can see that this line goes to find greeting, prints hello. Second line, print hello. Third line, print hello, and so on. We get the same effect. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we move on from functions is this idea of scope. Scope is really important because it describes when a function can be accessed or can be used. Just as if I have an apple tree in my garden, then only myself or members of my family can actually pick apples from the tree. Whereas if that apple tree was in the neighborhood, well, then everybody, all my neighbors, everybody on the street can pick from that apple tree. So here I've got 2 functions, one called greeting1 and the other called greeting2. And they do something slightly different. This one prints hello and this one prints hey. Now, inside each of these curly braces, it's a block of code. So you can view these as the walls of a house. So that means that if I was to create a variable, say inside greeting1, let's call it my name, and we'll set it to equal Angela, I can actually only use this variable, my name, inside greeting1. So let's try and print my name. That is perfectly acceptable. But if I try to do this inside greeting2 and I try to run it, then there's a problem here because this my name is an unresolved identifier. It doesn't know what it is because it was created within the 4 walls of greeting1. So it's only available for use inside these curly braces where it was created. Similarly, if I had created my greeting2 inside the boundaries of my greeting1 function, so greeting2 is now nested inside greeting1, well, now I can't actually call greeting2 outside of this boundary. So this doesn't work and it'll give me an error. And the only way I can trigger it is by moving it inside of the block where it was created. So namely right here. So these curly braces matter a huge deal. And that's why when you're coding, especially when you're creating functions, it's really important to keep them indented in such a way that you can always follow the closing brace vertically up to the line where the opening brace is located. There's a couple of tricks here. You can double click on the closing brace and it'll highlight the entire block for you. Alternatively, you can find the closing brace and hit the left and right key on it and it'll flash the matching opening brace just to show you where the boundaries lie. If you have your indentation really off and you're a bit messy, it might help to hit Command A to select everything and then go to Editor, Structure, and click on Reindent for these closing braces to be placed in the position where they are supposed to. And as you get used to this way of indenting closing braces, at some point your eye will be able to see easily that this is a block of code and this is another block of code. The best way of making sure that your indentation is correct is whenever you find yourself creating a opening brace, simply hit enter, because Xcode will then automatically insert the matching closing brace. And that way you'll always have the proper indentation. So that's all on the most basic type of functions. The next thing to do is complete the function 1 assignment.